Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko, our final episode in direct relation to Deep Space Nine. But before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct, and as I have said every single week, you should find us and follow us because we're great, we're awesome, we're a good time, and yes, this will be the end of direct Deep Space Nine content, at least for a while. I'm sure that we'll make references, we'll come back to things, maybe do some special rewatches, things along those lines. But this is it. This is gonna literally bookend our series for us. Um, Sorry, I do want to apologize because we were off for like 2 weeks. Had some things going on, need to get that taken care of. But here we are, we're back. So kind of dragged it out to get us here, but in the words of another franchise we love so much, it's been a long road getting from there to here. But we're here now. So we are going to dive into this book fairly quickly, but of course, as always, like to give ourselves a little chance to recap and catch up. So, David, how has your week been?
Week's been fine. Not much to share at the moment. Only thing in terms of viewing that I've done, I finally got around to watching the end of Squid Games. They did this interesting thing where season two was broken up into two halves, and they called season three. It's not season three. It's just season two, part two. It continues the story from where it stopped at the end of the first or the second season, but it's just a continuation of the story. I think it's great. I mean, I haven't gone online yet and seen what other people thought about it, but I thought that it ended in a proper place in terms of what they were trying to say with the show. And I won't give any spoilers here, obviously, but I thought Squid Games was a good show overall. It's 2 seasons long, basically. I know Perry, you were kind of like over it because it was super popular when it came out to the point of being obnoxious, but
Yes, it insisted upon itself, as
yeah.
Peter Griffin was famous for saying. And I don't know what that is about me that when something is like that, it's an immediate turn off. So
Right.
that's why I haven't watched Breaking Bad to this day. Like, don't message me, don't come at me. I haven't. I'm sorry. And every time I think that I'm going to, someone mentions it, and then it's like, ah, I got to put it back because you know, don't. And I wonder sometimes if that's how I sound to people when I push, Battlestar Galactica or something like that on them. And so, I mean, if it is, I get it. I'm sorry. I apologize. But yeah, I'll get there. I'm
Right.
confident I'll get there. I finally conquered Game of Thrones, so I will get there with other things.
Right. So yeah, then they also have a live action version of Squid Games where obviously they don't kill people, obviously, but they get a group of people together and it's meant to look like the show, and they do the games like on the real or
I
on
think I saw a
the
clip of that earlier today, as a matter of fact. I didn't know what I was watching.
yeah, and it's fun to watch in the sense of it's reality television, and reality television there's just something about it that's funny to watch. But the thing that's so annoying about reality television is the self aggrandizement of these people. These people act like they are holier than thou. They know things. I'm gonna be a real player. I ain't gonna be no fake player. It's like, shut up. Like, you don't even know what's gonna happen next. Like,
Well,
be quiet.
in their defense, I will say, as a person who interviewed to be on a game show, I know that there is a coaching component to that.
Mm.
They want you to kind of hype up, and especially if there's something a particular aspect of your personality they can exaggerate,
Ah,
they want you to do that. So,
well, I guess if
um,
they did
yeah.
me, I'd be the guy who's like always analyzing the game about what the next strategic move is, but not in a like a I got special abilities. My spirit tells me none of that nonsense. More like, you know, I've watched the show before, so if we know what the show
Well,
did before,
yeah.
we'll predict what it might do next, that kind of thing. But they probably don't like that kind of stuff.
Well, I know from my experience, mine was I don't like reality television. So it was basically like we really want you to go in on how much you don't like reality television.
Mm,
And so it's just
you're
like,
over
well,
it, yeah.
yeah, but it became like, oh, I don't because, these people I don't like and whatever else. And it's like, but how can I say I don't like them when I don't watch? Like that's I said for me, it's I'm wholly clueless. I didn't know who these people were, and so there were
Hmm.
a couple of times during the thing like I had to answer questions and some celebrities came up and I had no idea who they were, and they were all from reality TV shows. I was like, I don't know. I
Right,
don't know what to tell you.
right.
And so, yeah, but that became kind of the thing, and it was like, "Well, is there a reason you don't?" And I was like, "I mean, I don't like reality TV. That's all I can tell you. I don't like it." So, yeah, but I mean, I guess it was like that, and then it was hard for them to understand that someone really didn't watch or know any of these reality people.
Mm,
Like for example, I know the Kardashians
mhm,
because everybody knows the Kardashians.
mhm.
But if you were to ask me, like if you were to put them all up and then you were to ask me who's who, beyond Kim, I wouldn't be able to name any of them. I don't know
Right,
who the rest of them are.
right.
And so that was kind of the thing. It was like 'cause I was like, well, which one's that? Well, which one's that? And they just thought that was so funny that I didn't know who the people were. And I was like, I don't tell you, you know. And then there was like a
I would intentionally get them wrong. That's
oh, I did.
Constance,
I
and
wasn't
that's
at
Kaylee.
one point. It wasn't even like intentional. Like I did not know their names, and so I was just like, okay. I mean, I know that there's a Chloe in there somewhere. I don't know which one she is, but she's in there. And then there was another show, one of the Real Housewives shows. I had no clue, and so they put the thing out. I said, I don't know who any of these people are, like none of them.
Right.
So it was just like I don't know what to tell you, you
I
know.
I would intentionally say funny names like Constance and Kristen and Quarantine.
Well, I
Just
mean, it was like
make up
I
stuff.
couldn't even make up names. Like when the guy suggested a name to me, I was like, okay, I mean that could be her name. I don't know, you know. I said that sounds right. I said, do they all do like similar sounding names? Like, do they have, But I mean, I had no idea.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's the only thing I could give you as my takeaway from that experience is that when they figure out that you've got something like that that they can kind of highlight about you,
Mhm.
they really want to. So those people might be just leaning into that a little bit more than we because when we watch it we say the same thing, oh, I would never do that, all right, but that's kind of the fun of watching the game, I would imagine, is being
Right.
like that person's being silly, they're being effusive, whatever. um yeah, so but yeah, there you go. Were you done, by the way? I didn't mean to like take over.
No, no,
Okay.
that was basically all I had to say. Yeah. So.
Well, I will try to be quick so we can get into the book. My week has been filled with some rewatches. Now, I know that I talked about, I was making my way through Criminal Minds because I have a fascination with shows that have lasted a long time. And Criminal Minds is on season like 19. So again, piques my interest. I
Mhm,
just got to the part in the show run where my favorite character has made an exit,
mm,
and I wasn't yeah, I wasn't expecting it, but I kind of knew that it was going to happen because, like I said, I never really watched this show consistently when it was on. I
mhm,
mean, I guess it's still on, but I knew there had been some things that had happened to the actors,
mhm,
and so I finally got to that point, and so I was looking it up, and there's like a lot of controversy. So just if you are a Criminal Minds fan, my favorite character was Aaron Hodgner, played by Thomas Gibson. He was the leader, basically, of this
mhm,
forensic unit for the FBI. And
mhm,
he was on the show from like episode one, and then in season 11 to 12, there's some behind the scenes shake up, and he makes his exit. And it's not totally explained what happened beyond from the story that I could find anyway. He had some kind of beef disagreement with one of the writers. The way he tells the story was they had, were going back and forth about something that he didn't feel like was correct in the
Mhm.
script. And his foot was out, and the guy tripped over his foot, and it turned into this whole he assaulted me, and they decided to let him go. Now, when you look at some other things, there are some stories that, throughout the show's run, Thomas Gibson had had some issues. He had gotten uh, a DUI. He had been ordered to do anger management at one point because he had, I guess, gone off on some other people somewhere around the way, and it kind of just sounds like whether what he says happened, the guy tripped over his foot or not, it sounds like the powers that be were just kind of like, we're tired of your antics. Like, you're too much of a problem. We've already had to deal with some other things from you. So, kind of third strike, you're out.
Right.
Now, like I said, the show's been on now for 18 seasons. There was a brief hiatus that they took for a couple of years, and then they came back. No word as to whether or not his character will ever come back to the show. But at this point, especially considering that again, the show's on season 18, 19. He left in season 12. I feel like that's a long enough time that they could, bring him back and maybe give him a couple of guest spots or whatever it is. But he's off doing other projects and stuff now. A lot of the actors that were on the show originally have moved on and are doing a lot of other things now. So I don't think he's totally like upset that he's not on the show.
Right.
In addition to that, I watched the movie The Fifth Element with my daughter for the first time. Great sci-fi movie. It's one of those movies that like the plot is inane, right? And it really doesn't make any sense, but the acting is surprisingly good, and that's what carries the movie. So if you ever go back and like want to watch it, or if you've never seen it, I highly recommend it because again, you've got Bruce Willis, Gary Oldman.
Who
Um,
never meet, by the
they,
way. Those
yeah,
three characters never
right.
interact.
And there's only like one scene where there's like it's close. They could have seen each other. It's the elevator scene, and Bruce Willis is getting on, and Gary Oldman's coming off, and they pass each other, and they never see each other. um I didn't realize that until I was watching the movie today with my daughter, and I was like, yeah, these characters, they no lines together, no scenes, nothing. They never know about each other.
Mhm.
It has Mila Jovovich is in it as well from um
The
those
dead
video game
or
movies.
um, but Resident Evil. That's it.
Resident Evil,
Yeah.
that's it. Yes.
Which,
Great.
by the way, just I want to say this because it annoys me. In Japan, I think those games are actually called like Biohazard or something. And if you actually consider the name Biohazard, those games make a lot more sense in terms of the plot because it's all about scientific human experimentation as
Yeah.
opposed to like demons. Resident Evil sounds like a group of demons popping out of like
Well,
hell.
and from what I
But
remember of the movie, that's kind of how it feels. It's like, yes, it is science gone amok, but it's like science has gone amok because it's been corrupted somehow by these supernatural beings of some kind. They're a weird series of movies to watch. And I
yeah,
found out today while I
and
was
they made like
watching
a
it, because I was
million of them.
right, there's a bunch of them. And she's in like all of them. So
Yep.
it's just like I think there's like one that she's not in. But other than that, she's in all of them. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's what's been keeping her, going.
Yeah.
Chris Tucker's in it as well. The actor who plays Bilbo Baggins later, I forget
Hmm.
what his name is.
Yeah, he's
He's in
also
it
in
as
Alien and
well.
all that.
Yeah,
Um,
like I said, there's just a bunch of people in this movie who are really good actors, and you're kind
uh,
of like, why are you in this movie? But it's
Ian
funny.
Holm.
It's yes.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny, it's irreverent, it's got a lot of action. There's the love story that runs through it. There's just so much that it offers, and it really just works because the actors are really good.
Right.
So going, and then of course the opera scene, surprisingly beautiful. I think it's the one scene that always takes people it's kind of it's just like wow, like you just don't expect it in the movie, and then there it is, and it's beautifully done scene. So
Right.
um in addition to that, I also, to celebrate the 21st anniversary of Battlestar Galactica, I began a rewatch of the show. That's the reboot, of course, the 21st anniversary of the reboot that came out in 2004, I think 2004, 2005, 2005, because it's 21 years and it's 2026. So, came out in 2025. I watched the pilot episode and the first episode. Um, Still holds up. Still a great show. Um, I I know what I said earlier. Not going to try to do that to you again. You've been with us long enough that you know that I love the show. So there. And last but not least, I did watch the premiere of the new Star Trek series, Starfleet Academy.
I heard it was
Um,
terrible.
the first two episodes are out and available on Paramount Plus. And, I don't want to dogpile it because you're right. There's a lot of people who are talking about it and saying it's terrible. I'm going to say there's a lot about the show that can be fixed, and there is a lot about the show that shows potential. Now, with any Star Trek show, I've learned over the years of watching and rewatching these shows that the first seasons of almost all of them are terrible. I mean, they just are. There's something about the first, and this is probably true of a lot of shows. Something about first seasons they just can't nail everything right, and it really does take you kind of going along with them and having faith that it'll find its footing. Voyager, I feel like, didn't really find its footing until the fourth season, so that tells you something for the show because it ran for seven. Next Gen, again, middle of the second season is really where that show kind of picks up and kind of seems like it understands what it's trying to do and
Right.
moves on. Deep Space Nine, I would also argue that the second season is where the show is kind of like, all right, we these characters have gelled. So I'm going to give them a chance. Now, I feel like one of the drawbacks for them though is the fact that they are dealing with a much shorter season. All those other shows, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Next Gen, had 20 something episodes to work with. They've
Right.
got 10. They've got 10. So it may take them even longer if they don't make some changes. There's a lot of continuity errors. There's a lot of characters that um, they don't explain very well. And then even the bits that they kind of are your wink and nods to nostalgia and things like that, it's almost like it's very surface level. Someone saw it but didn't understand what it was, and so they threw it in here as well. um, that's my negatives on the show. My positives are, I think that Holly Hunter does a really good job for her delivery as Captain Ake I was gonna say movie, but in the show. I think of all the cast that we see, she does the best job of delivery of a new character. Not to say that it was like great, stellar, whatever. But I think she was just the most competent, and that could just be because she's the most experienced person in the room. I think that some of the younger officers did a good job with really kind of nailing home that they were, you know, in uncertain waters. Which is probably very easy to do when you're a young up and coming actor. I don't think I've ever seen any of these actors in anything before, so that's a strike in their favor. Other than that, I thought that some of the visuals were really nice. I like that we went back to Bajor. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna hope that it gets better. Oh, Paul Giamatti was pretty good also for what we
Well,
saw of him.
Paul Giamatti is probably one of the best actors of all time. So
I'm sure he
I
said so.
I
Um,
love him in one of his. You've seen The Negotiator, right? Yeah, his role in that one is fun because he's a snitch.
mhm.
He's the
He's got a
squirrel, the ratty snitch.
yes,
Yeah,
and he even kind of plays into that here a little bit. He's supposed to be our villain, but he's got this kind of ratty quality about him, this very scrappy quality about him that you're kind of like it makes you not like him. So again, he does a good job here. there are a lot of um, new aliens and new takes on aliens that I think that's where a lot of the controversy comes in, rubbing people the wrong way. The first officer is a Klingon Jem'Hadar hybrid, which, if we know anything about the Jem'Hadar, they were a genderless species. They were bred for
All
war.
male.
They appeared male, but yeah, they didn't reproduce sexually. They were grown. So you know, while we don't know that they didn't have sex organs, it was kind of implied that they didn't
Right.
because they were just bred to be soldiers and die. They didn't even live that long. They lived to be like 3, 4 years old, you
Yeah.
know. So to find out that there is a hybrid out there, uh, you know, maybe, I guess. Keep in mind the show is supposed to be set 1,000 years into the future from Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and all that. So could the Jem'Hadar have had some physiological developments? You know, the founders were big on genetic manipulation. So it's entirely possible that with Odo at the helm, that they fixed the Jem'Hadar to make them a more natural species.
Right.
We don't know. It's only episode 2. So again, things that we need to kind of find out. Who else? There is a Klingon, full-blooded Klingon in it. He's a cadet, and he's kind of falling into that classic trope of, yes, I'm a Klingon, but I don't want to be a warrior. Kind of following in that Alexander footsteps. He wants to be a doctor. So whether or not they're gonna like keep him in that more pacifist role, or if he's gonna find some kind of blending of the two, don't know.
Right.
Also, for some reason, Starfleet has a war college. That was a strange idea to interject into the series that's been all about peaceful exploration and learning from new species, and we welcome you in with open arms. You have a war college. You've got this other branch that's highly disciplined and militaristic, and their uniforms are all dark, and they practice combat all the time and whatever. Like, what?
Right.
That's totally opposite of the idea that Gene Roddenberry posted all those decades ago. We're
Hmm.
60 plus years in, and you're going to throw in a war college. And I mean, they really have not explained much about the war college again. Only 2 episodes out. I'm sure that it's going to come up. There's supposed to be something about how, again, with this being 1,000 years in the future and what happened to the Federation that caused its fall and the subsequent resurgence, there was a need for this. They're supposed to hopefully get into it. Will they get into it in the 8 episodes they have left? Don't know. Um, Probably not, or probably not to any real satisfaction. Now, I will be quick to say that this is not the first time that we've seen this kind of split in what Starfleet is. If we go all the way back to Enterprise, which is the prequel show to Kirk and Spock and all the rest of them, there was a more militaristic branch that worked in conjunction to Starfleet at the time, and they were called the Makos. Now, the Makos eventually do get folded into Starfleet, kind of become the security force for Starfleet, or absorbed into it, and kind of goes on from there. But they were basically the short-lived offshoot of the American military that hadn't quite been absorbed by Starfleet up to a certain point. Okay, so I'm just saying there is a precedent for it. To see it come back 1,000 years, 1,000 plus years, really, in the super future is a bit jarring.
Hmm.
Because the whole point of the absorption of the Makos was to say that Earth was now a unified front. There was no need for anyone to have a separate military or anything like that. The globe was united under the Federation and Starfleet.
Right.
So for them to now do this again, they're gonna have there's some work that needs to be done there to explain it. But again, only 2 episodes. Go check it out. See for yourself. I will say I feel like they otherwise nailed talking about the lessons of the academy and what the purpose of the academy is: exploration, inclusiveness. We're here to meet new species and to learn to work together and to go back out into space and explore and do science and do those cool things. They harped on that quite a bit. So That part is there. There's just inconsistencies here and there with the message that I think are throwing a lot of people off. So we'll see. Like I said, there's potential there, but a lot that needs to be fixed or otherwise addressed.
Gotcha.
But we're not here to talk about all that. We are here to talk about the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko. Once again,
Woo-hoo.
we'll hold up our respective copies of this book. Now, um, how do you want to do this? I thought that I would ask you, you
Yeah,
know,
it's interesting. I mean, we can't talk about it like a recap would make sense, but because it's a biography, that means it's very difficult because it's intentionally giving us the details of his life, and so it goes
we're,
over decades. So how do you
yeah.
quickly
So we're
explain
so
decades?
we're not going to do that. We're just going to say, obviously, this is the supposed to be the life story of Ben Sisko.
Right,
Now, basically this is being told from the perspective of Ben after he's been taken into the celestial temple. This is his last chance to talk to Jake, and he is giving Jake his entire story as kind of like a farewell, and also here's all the life lessons I could possibly teach you.
right,
Also interspersed with this seems to be this kind of Cisco is phasing in and out of time and having a couple of different experiences here and there, while Sarah, the prophet mother, I guess, is there to talk to him a little bit.
right.
Um, but yeah, that's essentially it. What did you think of this book?
Yeah. First off, let's go ahead and quickly mention it's written by Derek Tyler Attico, which it says edited by, but that's just to make it look like it's
Wink and a
written.
nod, right?
Yeah. And I just want to quickly say that he apparently has written a few short stories that had won some
He,
Star Trek.
yeah, he won the Strange New Worlds. Fan submission.
Yeah,
They were letting fans, write in teleplays for proposed episodes, and he won on two separate occasions. Now, I don't know if the things that he won, the stories he actually submitted that won, I don't know if those were ever turned into actual episodes, but I just know that he won it. He also
right.
wrote a couple of other sci-fi novels, and he's done some short stories, and he's done a lot of editing work for some other sci-fi stuff and Trek stuff in general. So the guy has seemingly a good background in sci-fi and in Trek. So I will
Yes.
um, give him his credit for that.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying this. It's not a bad book in a sense of like it's unreadable, like it's very readable. If you know the story of Deep Space Nine, and especially if you know Star Trek. I mean, the most fun thing in this book is reading Dr. Pulaski, being like, I know who that
Okay,
is.
okay.
Oh, okay. You want to mention something? Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to say the opposite. The opposite. I think this was a bad book.
Oh,
I think it was a bad book. I have been struggling to read it. In fact, I'll be honest, I didn't finish it. No, on the way. I started to I started to skip through because I wanted to get to being able to do our show tonight. And even
sure.
with the extra time that I had to read it, I was struggling to read this book because I just didn't agree with how it was written.
Okay.
Um,
Can I say
Go
something?
ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead.
I recently was talking with you about a book I've just read called Taliesin. It was the first book in the series about Merlin and Arthur, and I mentioned that the book had a problem in that it felt very and then it didn't have the South Park uh, creators' vision for storytelling of therefore or but. You know,
Yes, we
this
talked about this.
happens,
Yes.
therefore this happens, or there's a but, there's a something else comes in to create conflict.
Mhm.
That book, Taliesin, was a very much and then story. There wasn't a whole lot of conflict. There weren't any villains that really showed up. In fact, one of the problems with that book is like in the first there are three, acts, three sections. The first section introduces this one villain and like they're talking about how they need to stop him and he's planning to invade. And then in part 2, like he started a war, but you never see the character again. And he's actually managed to turn one of the allies, and one of the allies is now a bitter enemy. And like if we had focused on this battle, it would have been so interesting. But like the story is about the little princess, and so she's just Like all of this actiony stuff is happening in the distance. For this book, again, when I say it's not bad, what I mean is like you can read it. It's written.
Mm.
I'm not saying like it's like the grammar's not bad. That he knows his Star
Yes,
Trek stuff,
I will
but
give you that. Yes,
it
he has
has
a
an and then problem, which is a unique problem to biographies. Now, what's interesting as I was thinking about this tonight is I've read biographies. I've read the Washington one, the one on Hamilton that's real popular, Jefferson. I've read biographies. But what makes those biographies so interesting is talking about the conflicts that they were trying to get over in their life. Too much of what happens in this book is not about conflicts that Sisko has with other people. Like there's only one real instance I can think of when he is at be a part of the of his Star Trek training when he's learning to be an engineer, and this other person who's like above him gets
yeah, it's like
jealous
a
and tries to
TA
kill him.
basically. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
and that's the
way to
most
go
like
on the
interesting segment.
yeah. Um, I will absolutely agree. When it finally got into those parts of the book, the the story picked up. And I was like, okay, finally, we're gonna get something. Unfortunately, that's like halfway in. You've been
Yeah,
reading this stuff before, and it's kind of plodding. And then
right.
you finally get here, and there's something interesting to tell. And then it's almost like he can't wait to finish telling that, to move on to the next thing.
That is also true. He things happen and it's done. We're done
Right.
talking about
And
that. We're moving on to the next thing.
the amount of name dropping that was going on was appalling.
You thought it was too much?
It's way too much. He's connected to the way that this is written. Benjamin Sisko
He
is
knows
connected to
Geordi
almost
and
every
Data and
person of
Pulaski.
note, right? And he knew them all before they were them, or
Yes.
with the exception of Pulaski. I mean, even some deep lore people, like he's best friends with Susanna Lightgen, who, if you remember from the episode of Next Generation, she's the one that comes to the Enterprise when some people from an away mission that she went on years ago had started to disappear, and Geordi was on that mission, and that's where Geordi kind of devolves into that weird glowy
Reptile
creature
thing.
with the weird flipper hand. Yeah, that's her. Somehow
Okay.
they're friends. He dates Twyla Scott, who we were
Yes.
introduced to in a season 2 episode
No,
of
season one.
season 1. I'm sorry,
It's the
season 1.
finale of season.
That's correct. The
Yeah.
season he dates her. She's the person who's named the youngest captain in Starfleet. She beats Jean-Luc by a few months, but she's named he dated her.
It made me rewatch
Right.
that episode for the record. When I got to
I,
her character, I was
I
like,
just
"Who's that?" And
I couldn't stand it. He meets there's a crisis practice drill that they do, and that's where he meets a young Geordi LaForge. Dr. Pulaski sets his arm when he
well,
hurls
he
himself
freaking
off
breaks his back as a child.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and like, and she's the doctor that comes in and does the necessary repairs to him and everything else. I was like, he couldn't be more connected, you
He's
know?
the emissary, bro.
It's ridiculous. And then not only that,
Well,
but
hold on.
like,
Okay, let me ask you this.
okay,
That is obviously nostalgia bait in a sense. It's a make connections. You see a name. I'll put it this way. Most of the time, when you see these names, unless you're someone who is a Star Trek aficionado, you wouldn't know that this character is Jane from Joe. Like you don't know if you're
I
just an
know,
average person.
I know, but that's the thing. Like, the average Joe is not the person that's going to buy this book. The person that's going to buy this book is someone like me who has been a fan
Right.
for a long time and has
Right.
watched all those shows and has gravitated towards the character of Benjamin Sisko. So you can't give us a book like this that drops all those names and think that we're not going to know who those people are. You might have gotten away with one or two of them, but this many, come on. At some point, I was just waiting for Picard or Kirk to walk through and salute Cisco. It was ridiculous, and I
Okay.
was just
Well,
like,
here's the only thing I'm gonna just push back on in the sense of as someone who's not as knowledgeable as you are. For me, it felt like fun little Easter eggs of like that's a name I think I recognize. Like the girlfriend
okay,
he dated who became the youngest captain. like I said, I had to be like, who is that? I look her up. I find the episode, rewatch that whole episode. So for me, it was actually kind of fun.
But
Here's Jordy. Here's what young Jordy might have been like. You think
But
it
the
was just
thing
too
is,
much? Just too much of it.
it was just too much. I'm not saying he shouldn't have done any of them. He could have done a couple of them and made it, and it still would have been fine. Dr. Pulaski being the doctor that, basically resets him. I was okay with that one. We knew from her own backstory, her own back history, that she would have been around
Yeah.
during that time period. It makes perfect sense that she would have, could have been the doctor that helps him out and everything else. Okay, I'm fine with that. I was even fine with the Geordie reference, but the Twyla Scott and the data and I was like, come on, like, I mean, like, it's a bit much. That's all. And then it's not, and not even that. Like, he did some other deep drops, like when he goes off to the engineering thing on that planet, Moses, whatever it was, when he beams in with the other cadets and they're all put into a group. One of the first cadets that gets on his nerves is Straczynski, who again, season one, season two, he's the one who comes on the Enterprise with the Traveler and traps the Enterprise in that far-flung galaxy region. Remember
Huh.
when he thought that he was manipulating it, but it was really the Traveler that was phasing
Mm.
with the ship? Yeah,
That's
the
been a while since
arrogant,
I've seen that episode.
yeah,
Okay.
the arrogant dude who comes in and is like, I got this. Yeah, that's him. He's in there. His roommate is a Benzite named Laporin. Now, this one is one that I will accept because there is an episode of Deep Space Nine. It's the one where Cisco, Worf, O'Brien, and Odo go undercover as Klingons into the honor of
Hmm.
the Batleth, and there's a Klingon there who's telling a story about how they had recently attacked a Federation ship, and he had to fight the captain, a Benzite named Laporin, who they do hand-to-hand combat, but eventually the Klingon gets the upper hand of Laporin and kills him. And Ben, dressed as a Klingon, gets pissed off and goes over to the Klingon and beats him up. And then he mentions that he knew Laporin in the
Mm.
academy. So
Okay.
they made Laporin his roommate. I didn't mind that one. That one I could see as a direct connection to Ben. It's one that we already knew. It was in the lore. Done. I don't need all the others that happened.
Okay. So
Um,
then, what were you expecting, or what would you say you wanted then
I
from?
wanted a more complex book, to be
Right.
completely honest.
So
I
here's my suggestion for how it could have been. Oh, unless you have an idea, unless you were to say something. Sorry, I interrupted
No, well,
you.
there are several things I would like to
Go
say.
ahead. Go ahead. I have an idea, but
Um,
I'll say mine in
and,
a bit.
and now this one, I don't know I don't know how else to say this. I did not like the fact that this book was written in a way that it seemed like this is a story not about, or not about, but it was more like it was trying to impress upon the fact that Ben was black, like we didn't know that. But then also it left out a lot of what I felt like were obvious cultural markers that would have been far easier than the name dropping that it did. His grandmother Octavia, the grandfather James, all the stuff about New Orleans and um those particular cultural references. He went to Booker T High School, and like all of these kind of like um black American name droppings, or whatever that
Hmm.
is,
Right.
but there was no resonance, there was no connection with any of it. It was like he was just saying it as like, oh, I feel like I've gone a little too long without reminding everybody that the character is black, so I'm going to say something else that kind of influences that thought for you. But again, he didn't do it in a way that made it connect with the character and make it important. So it's almost like, why is it here? Why are we reading this? Like, if there's not a significance to it, don't put it in. Like,
Right.
okay, you want to talk about that he went to Booker T High School. All right. why was that whole section so short? And then there was no mention of the like significance of Booker T whatsoever. It was just that's the school that he went to, just to make
Right,
sure that you knew that it was a school named after a black man.
right,
That was it. That was the only real thing there.
right.
Um, the description of the characters and his family dynamic and all that. Again, I just felt like there was a lot of things here that he touched on just to make sure that people reading it would be like, "Oh yeah, he's black," but he didn't convey enough of the significance of those things, so that again, it's very surface level and I just didn't appreciate that. Like, especially considering what we know of Cisco and how he is, what we've watched on the show, and how much family is important to him, and how that all came about. The fact that we get all these very, superficial one-off moments, I didn't like it, and I wish that he had done a better job of telling some of those stories. And maybe part of the reason that he couldn't is because I don't know if there was a like page restriction on how long this book could be. They didn't want this to be a 1,200 page novel or whatever. But he breezes through so many things
Hmm.
that it makes what should be significant very, very less so. Yeah,
And then, yeah.
there's no significance here. It's just something that it just so happens that this was a thing. And then there's a section in there where Joseph is talking to him about, or attempting to talk to him about, um, slavery, and I just felt like that conversation was wrong. Like,
I'm glad you could say it because me as a white man, there's a part of me that's like, what am I gonna say?
I'll say it. I'll say it all day long. And I mean, and that's the thing. It's like it's not a conversation that should be really awkward for anyone. And in the context of a character like Cisco that's already set in the future, the conversation should not have been as
Heavy.
bland
Yeah.
as it
Good point.
was
Sure.
in this. There's
My
go ahead.
well, I guess for me, and this is even something that there is one episode where Cisco says something about being a black man, and he says it to
Yes, he says it to
it's
Cassidy, and it's
it's
during
the
that
episode about the
episode.
casino, right?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. For me, here's my general thought. If the future, like the show is set, what 300 years in the future? Is it
400
two?
years in the
Four?
future.
Okay, so
It's
even
400
400.
years.
I would just think that the place that humanity is at, and this is what Star Trek is even advocating for, is such that old wounds, like the wounds that you and I know exist in the world and in America now, those exist. But the future isn't going to have the same relationship to those wounds as we have. Now, they're not going
Not
to go
supposed to.
away.
Right. It's
Yeah,
not supposed to. The I always took it as, again, and this is something that you can directly look up. Roddenberry has said this. He wrote about it, he interviewed about it, so forth. That by the time humanity gets to the point where we are building these kind of ships and we have these crews and we're moving out into space and so forth, that we will have repaired, healed from those wounds. And
right,
that's the statement that we're making by venturing away from the planet, that all of
right,
our internal conflicts have truly been healed,
right,
repaired, not forgotten, not glossed over, but
right,
healed.
right,
And now we are venturing out into the universe because we understand ourselves as a whole collective people.
right.
And for this to come up in this book, and it's that is in no way acknowledged, I thought was strange.
Well,
And
and even the fact that Cisco's family is like holding on to it, the whole idea of the hotel and the kitchen is to hold on to old New Orleans, which in some ways is fine, like keeping the food alive, keeping the old atmosphere alive, like in a place where yeah, you're 400 years in the future. What was it like to live in the 20th century or the 21st century? So like the idea that they are giving people an experience of living in a old, in a time before, you can understand. But the thing I'm trying to emphasize that Star Trek, I think, has done in that one episode with Cisco in particular is if you are moving the current wounds, the current problems of today, and superimposing them onto a character from the future where supposedly those things have been addressed, assuming they have been addressed, then it feels like it draws the characters and the plot backward.
Well,
Um, yeah,
yeah, and I feel like Joseph's explanation was the hard part because it's
right,
off, and because he's talking about like because the whole thing is brought up in relation to Ben talking about joining Starfleet and going into space,
right,
and so Joe is afraid that he's going to forget who he was and where he came from, and so he
hmm,
takes Ben to the I don't know the term for it, basically slavery museum,
right,
and it's like this is where we come from, this is
mhm,
who our people were, and they had to fight to get to where we are now, and I don't want you to lose that. And Ben's like, I'm not losing it, I'm carrying it forward. And it's a moment where a really interesting conversation could have been had,
right,
where you did have this father who, while recognizing that progress has been made, not wanting his son to necessarily forget that, and
right,
his son reminding him that I haven't forgotten it at all. I'm acutely aware of it, and I'm moving forward with it in the same tradition.
right,
And that we have come so far, and I want
right.
to take us further.
Yes,
And that's not the conversation that was had at all. And I'm just like,
yes,
why wasn't, because that would be the realization of the dream from Gene Roddenberry on. That's kind of the draw of Star Trek for a lot of people, is the fact that it's saying that, like, yes, we made some terrible mistakes and we had some horrible decisions, and we did some terrible, terrible things to people a long time ago. But we've
yeah,
now gotten to a point where we have addressed those issues. We have achieved the equality that we needed, and now we are moving forward to show that we are better than that.
right,
And this should have been that lesson being taught here. And the fact that it's these two um, black individuals having that particular conversation, if done well, would have been extremely powerful. But the book misses it
yes,
entirely. It
yeah,
misses it. And to your point, Ben is acute. We know he's acutely aware of it because we watched an episode where Ben refused to participate in the holodeck because he was like, he's accusing his officers and Cassidy of doing exactly what Joe was afraid of, what Joseph was afraid of.
mhm,
You are forgetting your culture, you are forgetting your past, you are playing in a field, in a sandbox basically, and you're dismissing what the world was really like at that time. And
right,
I don't want to be a part of that because I've moved beyond it. I'm aware of it. I know all about it, and I am now embracing this aspect of my life because I can.
right,
Because all those people that before me struggled and suffered and went through horrendous things for me to be here in this future as
right,
the man that I am. And I'm not going to go back and uh indulge in something that is entirely fake and spits on their legacy. And Cassie kind of sort of makes a point there about this is, it's a fantasy, it's a game, how things could have been, whatever. But I still think Ben was right for what he said. And again, this book misses that. So yeah, I just
yeah,
didn't enjoy a lot of that.
yeah, yeah. I would say this. I know it's supposed to be an autobiography, and you would presumably want to start at the very beginning, but because the book is 250 pages long, and the way they choose to write it is a very kind of we're done with this, we move on, we move on. It would have been more fun, possibly, if two things had happened. First off, I think that there should have been a clearer through line. Like the whole purpose of the book. So the one thing we haven't explained yet, or I guess maybe we did mention it, but the book is written in the first person because it's supposed to be Ben Cisco having from the wormhole sent a message to Deep Space Nine, specifically to Jake, for Jake to then. It's like I guess it's also video files somehow, but like Jake is taking his father's words and writing them down and then compiling it into what we see before us. Um, So the first person perspective is fine, because it's an autobiography. But if there was a clearer through line about what is Ben Sisko's life about? Like if he's the
Yeah,
emissary and if he's supposed to be the guy who the prophets have really, picked, this is the guy we want to talk to or examine. This book did not unfortunately give us a clear indication of what about Sisko makes his life so different that it needed to be examined by the prophet so closely.
right.
It's
What?
it's a nice story. But it doesn't come off as being unique as you'd want it to be.
Not
Yeah.
at all. Not at all. I mean, if anything, the uniqueness is the fact that so many other famous people
Well, that's it.
touched
Yeah.
on the life, but I mean, it's like they didn't really touch on it in any meaningful way. Like, what did his run in with Geordie LaForge add to his life?
Exactly.
Nothing.
Yeah.
What
It's
did
just an Easter egg. Yeah.
yeah, it's just that's it. Straczynski got on his nerves, and then he was gone within a couple of
Like a week.
paragraphs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or yeah.
he
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
he did nothing but beyond ignore or beyond annoy everybody in the group when he was
Right.
there. Um, there's and then there's not a like there's also this undercurrent of like with the whole academy thing. Like Ben wants to be an engineer. He's solely focused on being an engineer. And yet everyone around him keeps being like,
You
nah,
need
you
to
could
be in
do more.
command.
You
Yeah.
could be in command. You could lead. You could do this, whatever. But it takes forever for him to finally get to a point where he's like, well, I guess I could do command. Like
Right.
I just didn't like that either.
Okay.
It's just
And that hits on the other problem. Ben Sisko, in his own biography, is too passive. And I'll give an example. His two girlfriends before he meets Jennifer are the most amazing women in all of the world, and they both dump him. And it feels like they dump him because the author didn't want to make Ben Sisko a bad guy. The first girlfriend's in high school. She's lovely. She's wonderful. She teaches him basically how to take care of his body by exercising. But
yeah,
she
coordinated
breaks up with
movements,
him.
ballet and everything else. Yeah. And she
She
breaks up with him.
because and get why? Because he's too awesome. Because
Right.
he's
She
going off to
recognizes
Starfleet.
what a load. She recognizes that he is destined to do something great and she would never want to interfere with that, and she realizes the relationship is so good that at some point there's going to be a time where he's going to have to choose her or Starfleet, and she doesn't ever want to have to put him in that position, so she's going to
Exactly.
make the choice for him, and they break up. And then basically the Twyla Scott thing is the same thing, but on the other
The
side of it.
reversed. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
reversed. Yeah. Yeah. She gives him the other side of the coin of I'm too wedded to Star Trek. I need to be the youngest captain in history, and I can't let my wonderful love for you, Ben Sisko, get in my way.
this is
And
becoming something special, something serious, and I can't let that happen because
right.
I am already committed to this goal, and I can't have you messing that up. So I'm gonna get out of the way.
Yeah.
And
And both times he meets these girls, it's a meet cute. It's
it's what, yeah,
like they fall in love at
and
first
that's how
sight.
and that was the other thing about it. It was like a cut and paste because he even says the same thing. And then I saw her, and then I saw her. It's like no one talks that way. No one. No one. It might
So
happen. It might happen once, but you want me to believe that in both instances, when you were so into whatever it was you were doing, and that's it. And I mean, actually, it happens a third time because that's also how he describes
Jennifer.
Jennifer
Yeah.
when he meets her at
So
George's party.
what did you think of the whole Jennifer situation?
So I like that he used the direct lines from the show.
Okay. I have
Um,
comments on here on that, but keep going.
yeah, well, and I did get to a point where I was like, kind of, because some of the dialogue was obvious, it was direct from the show,
Right.
but if you remember the episode, Ben was experiencing a flashback,
Right.
and or actually it was really a time displacement because the orb really did send him back in time. Um, so for that to be the dialogue that
They
was
had the
used
very first time.
for yeah,
Okay,
I
that was my
I
thought.
I thought that was a little bit strange, but I
Okay.
understood what they were
S-
trying to do there.
So
for the
you
sake
would
of
agree?
continuity.
So the way I understood that the episode, the emissary, when he goes back to meet Jennifer for the first time, that whole dialogue sequence is not the original dialogue they had, but it was a "Hey, I'm here to meet you for the first time again." Like when he says, "Your mother will love me." For me, that felt like that's because he knows, like he can relive this moment
Right.
again because he's
That
given a
is
chance to. But he does have he is
you're
not
right.
reliving it in a passive sense where he's just watching himself say things.
Right.
He is able to
In the
interact with it as
it,
he is
right.
then. And so when the
In the pilot, that's played off as confidence because he already knew.
right,
He already knew, so he was saying the things because he already knew that was going to happen. Like when he says, "It's not every day that you meet the woman that you're going to marry." He said that because he married her. He knew
right,
that.
right,
He's your mother is going to love me. He knew that because he'd already met her and knew that
right.
she, loved him. So now to see it in the book, it's played differently that he is so in love with Jennifer and love at first
Yes,
sight for real and
exactly.
seeing her
Destiny,
that these
right.
are the same words.
That he said then as well. Like when he in the pilot, the emissary, he said those words again only because he knew he had said them basically.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like that was the mistake because while it was fun to reread the words knowing how witty they were on the show, it does feel a bit. I mean, it would have been interesting for the author here to have given us a more
Maybe
authentic first
yes.
meeting.
Maybe use some of the same words, but make them a little bit more nuanced for a first meet. Like saying something along the lines of instead of saying your mother is going to love me, say something like I don't know, all mothers love me. I'm good with parents or something like that. Just like
I
a
will make
slight
sure
little
your mother loves me. I
yes,
will
I
do
will
everything.
make sure that your mother loves me. That's a
Yeah,
good one. It's not every day that you're gonna meet the woman that you're gonna marry. Okay, you can keep that one. That's a pretty
right.
strong
Yeah,
line,
you can
you
keep
know?
some of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
he reuses the line because he did remember using it, but the whole conversation being word for word,
yeah,
it does feel a
yeah.
little strange. Um, yeah, I felt like that was just interesting, like because it yeah, I think we've already said it. If the author had made choices about how it went the first time, and then remembering, Jake, when I first met the prophets, this is one of the first memories they examined, and falling in love with her all over again was wonderful. Blah 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 blah. That could have been its own moment,
Yeah,
but
there
instead,
there are other ways that it could have been done, and then also I feel like as important as the relationship with Jennifer is to Ben, doesn't it feel like we just kinda, like, steamrolled through it in the book? Like, it's
yeah,
just it's there, it's established, they're together, then suddenly they're living on Mars, and he's there for 5 years, and they have Jake, and, it's just like, Jesus, like,
well,
slow down, like, you
they
took
have a weird conversation too. They have a conversation where he's the commander and she's the oceanographer. They're not man and wife. They have to make sure they have certain conversations separately. And it comes off as something like, I don't think I could stand that. Like, there has to be, let me put it this way. As far as I know, like, I don't like the ships we have in the Navy, they're out there, but they're not traveling with their spouses.
no,
So,
because, I mean, there's no need for them, they're not going to be deployed for years at a
right.
time.
So I'm just curious if Starfleet, or sorry, not Starfleet, if Star Trek has ever really found a way to address. Have they ever really told a story about a couple? It feels like everyone is
No.
almost always a uniquely individual person. Like, let's just put it clearly. Like, Riker and Deanna don't get married until the last movie of the last thing
Yeah,
they were
they're
in.
they're on again, off again for decades, literally, and they
And
served
same
on
with
the same ship
Crusher.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Picard and Crusher's relationship is very much a off screen thing.
right.
We never see them really together. We see them flirt, but we never really see them together. No, Starfleet has not done, or Star Trek has never done, um, relationships in general justice. They show characters that want to attempt it and they have a hard time with it. Well, actually, now that I think about it, Voyager, but we haven't you
Got there
haven't
yet.
watched it yet.
We'll get there.
But yeah, Voyager is probably the one that handles it the best. So we'll talk about that when we get there and see that it's, between which characters and it's evolving. But that's the only time. Every other show, characterization, whatever, they have, you know, flubbed it big time.
Yeah.
So now it's interesting we bring it up because the Academy show is already highlighting a particular, romance.
Mhm.
Um, so we'll see how that plays out as well. But yeah, I mean, what I, another reason I have a problem with it is because, we never get to see Ben and Jennifer together.
Yeah.
When we meet
Outside of
Ben,
the scene
he's
that's
yeah,
redone, it's almost like they move right on to being married and all that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, but from the way that Ben talks about Jennifer and the reverence with which he holds her, you would think that having these kinds of conversations would have taken on a different tone. But we don't get to see any of that. So again, for him to cover it in this book and for it to not be um, addressed better than this
Mhm.
is another problem. So again, I have found just a lot of things problematic about this book, so much so that like I said, I did not make it all the way through. Not really. I ended up skimming to get to the end, and I was taking more time to look up this author because I was just like, I don't understand what you were aiming for when you wrote this. And then I thought about it, and the only thing I could come up with that made any sense to me was this: he wrote this because there was a need for it to be written, but not in the sense of this is an untold story that is important to the Trek universe, but more like
We gotta sell books.
we've got to sell books. Kirk has one, Picard has one, Janeway has one. There's no way we can't not have one for Cisco.
Right.
We better put something out real quick because if someone thinks about it a little too long, somebody somewhere might get mad that our only black captain doesn't have one and Janeway got one before he got his.
So that brings up an interesting question, which neither of us probably can answer yet because we haven't read those other autobiographies. But I wonder how those others are approached. So that thing I was going to
I
say
thought
is
about that too.
the thing I was going to say is like if the autobiography had say just started at start like a Star Trek Academy, that you started at the academy, he's already there. We would have missed some of the things that he supposedly had as a kid. Like, I mean, I have to say one of the things that was kind of it felt kind of annoying, I guess, about the first part is that like every one of his family members are awesome and amazing and wonderful and
Yes,
yeah,
they're beyond reproach individuals, you
yeah,
know, educators and uh renowned chefs and whatever else. They're
and
the best.
jazz musicians
Yeah, right.
on par
Just
paralleled, yeah,
yeah, every single person, and they could just, it was as natural as breathing that they
I
could do
mean,
all these things. And I mean, what every family, every family, it doesn't matter how in love the parents are, but every family has its struggles,
right,
has its ups and downs, has its black sheep. Every family, now to what degree those things happen, that's your debate, but
right,
every family has them. And
right,
for him to write this story of this large multi-generational family living in this one home and running two different businesses
yeah,
out of the same location and for there to be no problem, come on.
yeah,
Their biggest problem was basically we love our children too much.
yeah, yeah. What's your biggest what's your biggest flaw? I'm too committed as a chef. I'm
Right.
too I'm too good a hotel manager. Yeah. I'm too good an
i'm
educator.
I'm
I
too,
fell in love
yeah.
with my husband so quickly. We married within months. You know.
We that is the other thing too. My God, all of them with the fast proposals. Joseph meets Elizabeth, and 3 months later, she's moved in. Ben meets Jen, and
Now, Part of me would say that that is the fault of the show because they introduced the idea that his birth mother Sarah and his, mother he grew up having were two different people, but he didn't even know that until the episode aired and revealed that to him, which created all kinds of convoluted stuff with the Sarah Prophet character.
Hmm.
I feel like that was the author having to make up for the flaw of the show, frankly. But it did still highlight the problem of, yeah, they're all amazing, and the biggest tragedy in his life is when these people die, and that is tragic, but it's tragic because they were so awesome, and now they're dead.
Right. Right. That's exactly it. It's tragic because they were just so wonderful and they gave so much and they contributed so much to this family dynamic that suddenly their absence was
The
all encompassing.
cornerstone is pulled out.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's like one after another, the grandmother, then the grandfather, and then he gets a few years, and then here comes the mom as
yeah,
well. It's just like, geez.
yeah,
And the family just overall, yes, they have their devastation, but they also seemingly recover fairly quickly.
yeah.
You know, Joe is back in the kitchen after finding out that Elizabeth has died.
Right. Yeah, that's how he copes is being a good chef. Yeah. Yeah, if they had started like this, we're at the academy. We got young Cisco. And again, if the book had two things, one in particular, if it had a clear delineation about what the purpose of Cisco's life has been. There's something unique about his life, and it doesn't mean that every aspect of his life had to deal with this subject, but there was some sort of thing that his life
Or
came back to.
or if they want, because this starts off as a story to Jake to help Jake move on into his own life. If they had been more consistent on that thread,
Or that.
it would have that would have also changed the narrative. But too much of it was like you said, and then I did this, and then I did that, and then I
Right.
did this, and then he would sum it up at the end. All I'm saying, Jake, is, and then he would say something else, and I was like, what you just said there barely relates to the crap we just read that you did.
Well, and here's the thing I want to emphasize because the opening episode Emissary talks about how what humans do and what Starfleet does is ask questions so they can get answers and to ask more questions. And so I wish there was something in this book that there was some sort of question that like maybe it's not one question, but there's always something about Cisco is an asker of questions who likes to get answers because he's an engineer, for example. And then as a commander, that gives him more opportunities to get those answers or something. Bring us back into like what makes him the emissary. That's not clear in this book.
Not
Why
at all.
is that is not explained here? Why is it that Cisco was picked by the prophets?
And then and what makes that worse is those little interspersed bits where he is kind of phasing in and out of events, like he's at Bahala at one point,
Hmm.
and then there's another one where he's, I forget where the other one, just whatever. But the fact they just keep happening, and it seems like it's trying to tell us something,
Hmm.
but what is it? And then the book, when it ends, because like I said, I did skim to get to it. It ends with a note from Benny Russell.
Yeah, it's an interesting
We haven't heard from
switch.
Benny Russell the entire time. And
Well,
suddenly he drops in this letter from Benny Russell.
yeah, the conclusion of the entire book is as though Benny Russell had been writing this whole thing from the start.
So
That
we've just been super inceptioned. This
yes,
is Jake
this is
telling Ben's
Inception,
story as
start to
told
finish.
all over by
Benny
Benny Russell.
Russell. Yeah.
Why? Why?
Yeah. Well, okay. Okay. So here's what I'll say. This book was fun, as I said earlier, because it feels like a bunch of Easter eggs about the characters that are mentioned. So I'll put it this way: as like you mentioned characters as we were recapping earlier that I didn't realize was a reference to somebody, like his roommate. I didn't realize that was ever a reference to anybody. So for me, it was fun thinking that this author knew Star Trek so well that he could write a story and fit it amongst all the other pieces that have already been placed. For you, you're saying that that beggars belief.
So what you just said, I think also sums up the problem with the Trek fandom and shows,
Okay.
and especially the new stuff.
Okay.
If you are a person who knows it like I do, who has been watching this stuff, like again, I'm gonna turn 40 in a few weeks, and Star Trek is 62, 63, I think. Okay,
Okay.
so the majority of my life, I've watched this in some form or fashion. Like I remember watching my first episode of Star Trek at 6 years old. So I've been watching it and rewatching it and the movies and the books and the beta canon and all this stuff. I've gone through all of those things. If you're a person like me who's done that, when you encounter something like this autobiography that's kind of one of those where you expect to get more of that deep lore, immersive feeling from, because we all know movies and TV never have the time to do that kind of stuff. And that's why we go to books. And if
Hmm.
you, I mean, you read The Lord of the Rings, right? And then you go and watch the movie The Lord of the Rings. As expansive as those movies were, you know there was a ton cut out of them if you
Hmm.
read the books.
Right.
So if you're that person who knows all that stuff, when you get into this kind of subject matter, or you see a new TV show and you see them playing lip service to the stuff that you have, um, kind of obsessed over for decades,
Hmm.
it's disheartening to say the least. But if you are a casual observer or a new fan who doesn't know any of it, but you like sci-fi, you like more of your fantasy fiction stuff, you sat down and watched The Lord of the Rings for the first time with no reference point or context, you think something completely different about those movies. You think something completely different about Starfleet Academy, the show, or Strange New Worlds, the show, than I would.
Right.
And what we're seeing is more a trend of we're going to go that route. We're not going to make content for the people that have been here for 40, 50 years. We're making content for the new. We want the new individual to come in and watch our show and whatever else. And it's always a problem because you never get as many new people as you have with your already built in fan base from your old
Hmm.
populace.
Hmm.
And your old populace has been supporting you this whole time. That's why you have the money to do what you're doing,
Right.
because we've been there and supporting this project for all these years. So
Right.
for you to not give us something is going to be a problem. And that's
Right.
why it gets ripped to shreds.
Right. Um, the final thing I would suggest for the book,
Yes.
excuse me, in my lozenge.
While David tries his best not to hack a lung up, I will say my final thing for the book. I'll give him a chance to rest. My final thing for this book is, like I said, I had several different issues. I've talked about this book a lot around my family members, and got to the point where I was bad mouthing this so much that my own mother said, "You should just write your own book." And I said, "Well, I can't write my own now. Someone already wrote one. They're not going to take another version of the autobiography of Ben Sisko, But
Right.
it was fun because for a moment I thought about it and I was like, I could, but no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy. I'm not gonna, go that route. But I will say, um, there were aspects of the book that I did find enjoyable. Once we moved past the early family dynamic stuff and more into his early days of the academy, those things I did appreciate. I kind of appreciated the images. Like, I don't know if we've shown any of this, but there's a little section in the book that's got photos
Yep.
of Ben at different stages, his family at different stages. These I like, but this is also images that came out in kind of like the early days of people being able to chat GPT images very clearly. So it's clear that these are off a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you get this book at all, just remember that when you're looking at those images. But yeah, I mean, I read this book again? No.
I'll
Um,
say
I
that too.
I
Yeah,
do have a plan to get the autobiography of Jean-Luc Picard,
to
and
compare.
I do want to read it and compare and see how that goes. And if I hope that I don't want to say I hope I don't end up liking it because that's a bad thing to say about any book. But if I'm able to clearly see that there's a difference in complexity and development and things like that, I'm going to have a problem
Yeah.
because there's no reason for there to be such a despairing difference.
Well,
So
I mean, in what sense though? I mean, if it's two different authors writing two different books, let's say they were both given freedom to write the books as they want,
mhm.
that would mean one thing. But if they were given a lot of like if Star Trek or CBS or Paramount or whoever was giving a lot of notes the whole time, saying we want this story told this way, you just put pen to paper.
Well,
That's one
then,
thing.
I mean, he shouldn't be. Then the author of this shouldn't be proud of it because if that's the case, he didn't write it. They did. So
Right.
then him saying
Well, I guess what
edited
I'm getting
by
at though
is
is like,
correct.
what do you when you read the Picard book, what would make you upset? If it's well written because it's complex, you're saying you'd be mad at the author here, or the for
Yes,
or
yes.
start
I would be mad. I would be mad at this
or at
author
CBS for picking him.
both
Yeah. Okay.
because
Yeah.
he shouldn't have taken the job if he didn't understand the assignment. And if you don't understand the assignment, you should take the time to understand it. If you don't know anything about the character of Ben Cisco, go watch it a few times. I understand that some of the stuff, especially the early life stuff as a kid stuff, would have been hard for you to reference because it's not in the show. But there are a lot of books that are recognized as canon that did kind of talk about some of it. Like there's a whole series of Starfleet Academy books that feature a lot of these characters when they were in their academy days. I think Cisco has one. I'm not sure on that. I think Cisco has one. Worf has one. Picard has one. Geordi has one. Riker has one. Janeway has one. There's stuff out there.
Right.
So um, if you didn't do that before you wrote something that you were going to boldly call the autobiography, I've got a problem.
Okay.
Uh,
See, are you saying that you think that this author did not understand the character of Cisco well?
yes, that's exactly it. I don't feel like he truly understood the character of Cisco. And I think
Okay.
that we run into a twofold problem of he it was a rush job, and because he was someone that they were familiar with from other writings he had submitted that were Trek based, they thought that he could do this job. And I think that he's kind of like J.J. Abrams to a degree of he didn't have an understanding of the character, but he thought he could get over that. He thought that if he did enough other stuff, it wouldn't matter that he didn't know the source material. Not true.
Well, I mean, again, the thing that I thought was interesting, and maybe this is artificially done, but the fact that there were all these other character Easter eggs felt like it was because he knew what those other characters were and where they might be placed if we were to put Cisco. If we were to have all these convenient plot points where he meets all these characters, it still fits chronologically
Oh,
together.
yeah, but I mean, that's not information that he gleaned because he's deep, and it's necessarily deep in the lore.
Sure.
You could Google
Well, I mean,
those names.
he mentions certain episodes. I mean, I'll put it this way. I think it's possible that he knows the show. If he's a Star Trek guy who's written Star Trek before, I feel like giving him the benefit of the doubt.
So
What
fine,
what would you say is
I can do
essentially
that.
missing? What's essentially missing from the characterization of Cisco in the book, would you say? I feel like it's a storytelling problem is he doesn't have a through line about what he's trying to say Cisco's life was, and he doesn't also have villains. He doesn't really have to push against other
No,
people. He's either too passive, like there's the bully in high school. It's the only real villain there.
which
There's
I
that one guy who tries to freaking kill him in the middle of the ocean. which is interesting but almost over the top. And
And
then
yeah,
when he,
it comes out of nowhere.
yeah,
I think what I would say is the biggest thing that stands out to me is the lack of relatability. Like, nothing about Cisco's life you could relate to in any way. And it's not to say that, oh, because he's in the future or whatever, that we're not going to be able to relate. There's plenty of things in it that we should have been able to relate to. The fact that he was homeschooled, that story could have been told, that aspect of the story could have been told differently. The loss of a family member who hasn't had experienced loss, and yet they make everything he, the author, made it so weird the way that the loss of everyone, Jennifer, grandparents, his mother,
and his
it was just
girlfriends,
so, and his
they're
girlfriends, it was the breakups, like all of it. There's nothing there that said this- that this is an aspect of a human connection. And
right,
for Cisco, who is literally defined by his humanity, that's the
right,
whole reason that the prophets were interested in him. The
right.
fact that he is not relating this well
Hmm.
is a problem. And ultimately, the biggest example of that is the fact that he is telling these stories and they're supposed to be lessons to his son, but everything he says when he gets to that point of trying to relate it back to Jake, it sounds very, once again, superficial,
Yeah,
very performative.
cliche.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right, exactly. There's nothing deep to it. There's nothing that speaks of the bond that we know that Jake and Ben had with each other. There's none of that. And it's like you broke time and space to tell this story to your son, and this is the best that you've got.
right.
Try things?
Yeah,
What?
I'll put it this way. Because Cisco is now supposedly superhuman, he is more than, it feels like the author felt like he had to make Cisco more than from the get-go. But the more than is not Cisco himself, it's all these people around him. All these people around him are just the next step above the next person. His girlfriends are beautiful and
Mhm.
amazing. I mean, he literally dated the woman who became the youngest captain in Starfleet.
Right.
I
She
mean,
was the hot shot. He had her.
right. I mean, again, for me, I liked the kind of like Easter egg moment of that, but
But
at
the
the same
relationship
time,
itself really didn't do anything. Even when
yes,
she tells him why she's breaking up with him, that should have been some kind of lightning rod moment for him. And even the explanation of it is so bland. It's just like, well, what was the point? And part of that is like it's also an issue that we have in a lot of the episodes. When you try to rush through your story, you
hmm,
lose the significance of the story. The
right,
fact that Benjamin Sisko was able to date Twyla Scott should have been a big deal. And it should have been that it should there should have been way more parts to that. There should have been some more ups and downs of that. That's the first real grown-up relationship he had,
right.
you know?
Here's let me just read this passage about Tryla. About a month after dinner with my parents, our semester was finally over. By this time, Tryla and I were inseparable. A lot of cadets were taking advanced summer courses to prepare for the next academic year, but we decided to take the time off and spend it with each other. We wanted to build a foundation for our relationship, and we knew we wouldn't have the opportunity to work on it in our second year after graduation. Blah 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 blah. That's the same passage where she says it's over. I love you deeply, completely. This relationship is becoming the most important thing in my life. It's changing me, and I can't let
Mhm.
that happen. I told you when we first met, I love Starfleet more than anything, and I'm not going to give up my dream of becoming a captain for anyone, not even you, Ben. It's over. Yeah, it's so melodramatic. It's so
It's
it
such a the wave is so intense and yet so short.
right.
It doesn't have a chance to truly resonate with you with
Yeah,
what's happening
exactly.
here.
Yeah.
It's the relationship began and ended in 2 pages.
Right. And because the character of Cisco is not the one making most of these decisions, it means that he's just passive. He's not.
That
He
he's oh
doesn't.
yeah, exactly. He's observing his own life and he's reporting it to Jake, who's
Right.
then reporting it to us. And
Right.
this is also some weird Inception level bullshit with
Benny.
Benny Russell. So again, you've got this weird third person story being told to us, and all of the emotional connection, all of the meaning, all of the parts that you really need to uh be in this story to connect with Cisco, which is what you should be wanting to do when you're reading the autobiography of anyone. You should be
Mhm.
wanting to connect with that person to understand them. That's the point of the autobiography. You're getting their perspective on their life, on their events that they were a part of, and
Mhm.
to hear how he struggled between those moments. And these are the competing thoughts and all that. That's what you're looking for. That's exactly it.
Right.
That's my problem. There it is. It took that long to get to that. We don't have any of that. He is just observing everything. He wants to be
Yeah.
the only thing that we know that he ever says with any form of conviction is he wants to be an engineer. Everybody else around him is pointing out to him that he needs to do something else. And it takes him forever to finally see it and get there. And even when he does, it's kind of like, "Meh." Like there's nothing major. There's no wrestling with the situation. He doesn't even have to compete that hard. Jennifer just, you know, okay, Ben, I'll go with you. And then we skip
Yeah.
over and they're engaged. And then we
And
skip
then she's
over
dead.
and Ben's bored. And then we skip again and now she's dead. Right. We didn't get to see any of the things that would have made their relationship
Yeah. Why was there?
special and significant. And
Why did it
why
tear him
was
up so much when she
right.
died?
Why was he PTSD'd so hard when we met him in The Emissary? What was it
Mhm.
about this woman beyond just she so happened to be his wife? What was it about her that made her so special? This book was something that should have gave us at least a taste of that.
Right.
Nothing. Nothing.
Yeah. And here's the final thing I would say about why him being passive is a problem. So George R. R. Martin likes to quote William Faulkner when talking about why he likes to write stories, and the line is, um, "Stories are interesting when they're stories about the human heart in conflict with itself. When a character has two competing things within themselves that are tugging this way and that way with them. I want, like the Count of Monte Cristo, I want revenge, but I feel like I'm losing my humanity by being so focused on that, and I can't love again. Um, just being the most recent book I've read, so that's the example I'm thinking of.
Not a bad example.
Exactly. Like Cisco in this book does not have that. There is not two competing things within himself that he is wrestling with, and that explains who he is when we first meet him, why the prophets are interested in him, and what makes him the emissary. Um, I don't know what I would have done differently in the sense of I hadn't really thought about how I would have written this story if it were me, but those are the critiques I have. And again, it's not a book that I was able to read it. I didn't have trouble reading it myself. I mean, I have more time than you do to read, as you know, so whatever. But I the whole time I was definitely feeling, you know, just like especially with the girlfriends, with it being like they're so wonderful and amazing, and then like the double whammy of how they broke up with them, and Jennifer felt a little flat because she's beautiful, but what about her person makes
Mhm.
her wonderful? Not that she's a great starship captain or a great dancer or a great oceanographer. As a woman, as a person, what was it that made her um, that special someone?
Right.
Um, yeah,
I
I don't
agree.
know. Give him some villains. If they had more villains that he could have fought up against, and I don't mean like shoot him out in a Starfleet battle kind of way. I just mean like like there's some coworker that has a different philosophy of life that um, he both admires and thinks has flaws to it. The Volk, like there. I forgot this the whole time. Remember the episode about the baseball game at the end of in season 7?
Take me out to the Hollow Suite.
Yeah, and it's the Vulcan character who's like, "We're better than you guys." Blah 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 blah
Solo.
blah. Yeah, I did that character ever get mentioned to I don't remember him being
He's in the
mentioned.
book.
I'm sure he was, but I can't remember
Yeah.
the details of it. Do you remember what
It
happens?
was so Ben. They got to Starfleet Academy, and Ben tried to eat replicated food and threw up. And so
Right,
he went back home, stole a bunch of stuff, basically, brought it back to his quarters, and made himself jambalaya.
right,
And Lightgen, Susanna, she smells it and she brings several other cadets over to Cisco's quarters, one of them being Solok,
right.
who is like, it's a good thing. I think that's what he says. It's a good thing the Academy doesn't have any regs against you modifying your desk this way. Otherwise, I'd have to report you. And Cisco's just like, what the hell's your problem?
I would have made him my villain. I would have picked that character and said the Vulcans have always been one of the most, other than the Klingons, the most well developed and interesting races in the Star Trek universe. Let's have one of them be our villains, not in a, again, shoot 'em up battle type, but at the Academy. Who is this character throughout Spisco's? Because when they meet up, there's clear animosity in that episode, even
Hmm.
though it's supposed to be so late in their careers. Um,
Well, and Cisco even says in an episode that he's known Solok since the Academy, and that's one of the things that he argued with him about because Solok even then was arguing for the um uppityness of Vulcans, basically the superiority of Vulcans.
right.
And Cisco was like, "Yeah, no, that's not why you're in Starfleet, and that's not why any of us are here."
And
Uh, yeah, they should have kept that. They should have shown that or had that in this book.
and here's the through line that I would focus on. I think that unity, we have Earth's problem solved. We can now, meet up and join the Federation with other planets, other peoples. Unity doesn't mean uniformity. The Klingons can still be Klingons, the Ferengi can still be Ferengi, and the Vulcans and the humans and everybody else can still be unique and even excel in their culture's, way,
That
but
is
that somehow, because of the way the Federation works to bridge those divides, and Cisco learns to champion that in his autobiography. That's
absolutely.
what I would have, as I'm
That
trying to think
and
out
that's
how I would have done it.
and that's the message that Starfleet or Star Trek has always had, that we're not trying to erase your cultural identity. We accept you for who you are. And
Right.
that's what it means to be in the Federation. The next step, the extra step when you join Starfleet though, is
Mhm.
that in spite of your personality, or yeah, in spite of your personality, there is literally a universal code of conduct that everyone agrees to operate under if you want to call yourself an officer in this organization.
Oh, I
The
like that.
payoff
There's like
the
a two
payoff for
tier
that,
kind of.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, you
The
accept everybody for their
Federation the
uniqueness, and then
Federation is
you
right.
subsume that into a hierarchical structure in order to accomplish great things.
Exactly. And
That's
we've heard that explained a couple of times. Picard explains it well in a few episodes, but that is essentially the difference, because people are always like the Federation and Starfleet are one of the same. No, they're not. They are distinctly different. The Federation is a alliance of worlds that have all agreed, yes, to they share to a certain degree a broad uh rule book,
right.
but we see examples of the fact that they are not all beholden to one universal law code. Uh, Deep Space Nine is a prime example of that. How many times did Odo stop a criminal, arrest a criminal, and then have to take that criminal to their local magistrate to adjudicate whatever the situation was? They couldn't just, if the law was the same, the law was the law, then Cisco would be able to pronounce sentence on these people and move on. But
Right.
he can't because he is a member of Starfleet.
Right.
Starfleet upholds these rules, but one of the rules that Starfleet upholds is we obey the law of the land. We are Federation officers in Bajoran space,
So
so
their laws are the ones that
they're
matter here. Yeah.
right. We now that does not mean that all Bajoran law totally trumps what Starfleet is doing,
Right.
but they give them deference. We give the Vulcans deference to handle their things, the
That's
Andorians, the Tellarites, so
the
forth.
episode
We do
about
that.
Dax. That's how that works. It was a
Exactly. That's why the
Bajoran
guy
judge
a Bajoran
Yeah.
judge because they were in Bajoran space, but the crime happened on a totally different planet, and
Right.
that's why they were still going to have the hearing. Exactly. And that's what Starfleet is all about. We understand that you are Ferengi, you are Andorian, you are human, you are whatever. We understand that you come from these places that have different social and cultural mores, but you want to be a part of our organization. So these are the rules that everyone must agree to follow to be in our organization, or else you can't wear the uniform.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And even those rules don't say we're going to cut out your culture,
Right.
you know. But that's why we're able to work together, because we've agreed that, hey, if you have some kind of difference, we need to talk to each other this way. We need to
Right.
handle it this way. This is our code.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, that's what this book should have been. Cisco learning that difference.
Mhm.
And because I mean, let's put it one way. Maybe it's not that Cisco was himself the unique one. It was that he was the guy in the right place at the right time for the prophets to, hey, you're the first
Right,
Federation person we've come across
right.
that can teach us this. So you're our guy.
Because you have a code of conduct that, while alien to us, we can appreciate.
Right.
And we can and you can teach it to us, which is what he does. He teaches it to them, and then they begin to use him as their frame of reference for other things.
Right.
So it's not so much that, yeah, like that would have been an interesting way to present the prophets in general, because
Right.
that's what they struggle with. They're like, we don't understand any of this that you're talking about, but Ben is the one who's able to relate this to them, and he's able to do so because of his Starfleet training. And he says
Right.
that's one of the things you can learn the most about us. We're not here just to answer questions. We're not just seeking answers, he said, but we're also seeking new questions.
Right. We're also not here to take
We're not
over the wormhole
right.
or
We're not here to
Bayshore.
conquer you. We're
Yeah.
here to learn. We're here to experience.
We're
We're
here
here
with
to
aggressive friendliness, damn it.
right, right. So yeah, there's just a lot of this is missing.
Yeah.
We've
This
we've said it multiple times.
well, it's fun that we get to talk about it because
Yeah,
just talking, just reading the book. I didn't love it. I mean, I didn't hate it. I mean, I had, like I said, I had some fun with it. We didn't talk about, for example, that the bit where he makes the Defiant is a curious little bit. Talking about how he poured himself into it and they worked at it, but it wasn't like they failed. They couldn't get it to work as they wanted it to. The Dax character is interesting. I was actually disappointed, frankly, with the fact that I mean, the idea that he is this womanizer, but also a really good diplomat. We didn't see him doing the diplomat
once
stuff.
again, the Dax thing is a problem. They want us to believe that these two have this connection, but we never see it. We only
Right,
ever hear about it as an off-screen thing, and
right,
then here he is mentioning it, and again, the way in which we're introduced to the character of Dax in the show, we're supposed to believe that Curzon Dax was this amazing mentor to Ben.
right.
This book, the autobiography, should have talked about how he was that formidable
Well,
mentor.
he should have been the one to teach that lesson about societies being unique because
Right. He's an
he's a
ambassador,
symbiote. He's a Dax.
and he's an
Each
ambassador.
individual
He
person.
feels
Well, that's my
yeah,
point though. But even to really emphasize it, just get down to it. The Dax symbiote is a perfect example of this. You are a unique individual, but in Star Trek, you are submitting yourself to a hierarchy. So as a Dax host, you are a unique individual, and you have unique individuals within you, but you have to find that balance. And so
right.
Cisco learned the
And
balance from.
ultimately, the symbiont is the more important thing.
Well, yeah, but my point was like if the plot of the book was Cisco learning to appreciate alien cultures and appreciate
Mhm.
different people and learning how to combine them under command. I mean, he's a commander. He is in the command structure, even though he starts off in engineering. That's how I would do this plot. He's at Star Trek Academy. He's a talented engineer, just like the rest of them. Like he's good at it, but that's the problem. Actually, it's one of the things I liked about the book early on is like they were saying he was very talented and he got into Star Trek early, or Starfleet early. But they said his parents said to him, "Hey, we think you still need to learn some life lessons, so don't go just yet. You need to go to high school, learn a few things about life." I like
which
that they weren't like. I like the fact that they um were like he is talented, but they slow his roll a bit. Anyway, my point is that if we had written the story such that like that Vulcan character was his pain in the ass, and the Vulcan character is about Vulcan superiority, and we know that, for example, the Romulans are an example of how that philosophy has gone sour and bad, and if the Vulcans are thinking they're superior to humans, they are in many ways, and like Cisco tries to be superior but never can, and then he learns from Dax about how to appreciate differences and then meld them together. Just that's how I would have told the story as I've
yeah,
given my chance to think about it.
yeah.
Um, damn.
There's another book. It's called Pathways, and it's about the Voyager crew, and the it's basically the autobiography of the various characters. Basically, the premise of that book, it's an old book. It's a book came out. I think I was probably 13 or 14 when it came out. Um, but the premise is basically that the crew of Voyager is doing what they always do. They're out exploring somewhere, and all of a sudden, noxious fumes fill the air, and they pass out. When they wake up, they've all been herded into this prison camp, and now they are struggling to survive in the prison camp. And part of the way that they are passing the time in order to um, stay together, maintain solidarity, is they're each telling their life story. Each crew member is telling their life story to help the others kind of like understand who they are and to draw strength from the sharing,
Uh-huh.
basically. And so we get each of these stories in turn of the main um, cast, except for the captain. But we get everybody from the main cast, and the way they tell their life stories is it's great. It's phenomenal. And what you just said about how Cisco's parents were like, "You don't know enough to know this. We're going to send you to school."
Right.
That's something that also happened to another character that you read about in the book. In that book, he's relating his story, and in his story, he wanted to go and study somewhere, and it would have caused him to be basically locked away for several years in isolation to do this studying. His parents were like, "Yeah, we're not really sure that that's a good idea for you. So before, if that's what you really want to do, fine. But before you do it, we want you to join Starfleet Academy and go through that and get trained up and experience a bit of culture and the universe a bit before you do this isolationist study." And the guy's
Uh-huh.
like, "I don't want to, but I love my parents and I want to honor my parents. So I'll do this for them. But as soon as I'm done with the academy, I'm going to go do this thing."
Uh-huh.
Goes to the academy, finds out, you know what? My parents were right. I did need to learn some new things and understand people and whatever else, and ends up staying in Starfleet instead of going and doing his isolationist thing for a while.
Okay.
So, that's a common theme, but the explanation given in that story was far better than what we got in this autobiography. And again, it's like even if you're not necessarily able to find homework on Cisco in his early days, there's enough material of other characters out there that you could have read that and been like, "Hey, I see how this was done for several different characters. Let me at least try to match that level of complexity and creativity
Right.
in giving this story."
Right.
So, and the Pathways book is officially recognized as canon, by the way. It was written by the chief writer at the time of Voyager when it came out, so it's definitive.
Gotcha.
Well, we've gone
Close to
almost
2 hours.
2 hours
Yeah.
on
We're
this
getting
book.
pretty used to that these days, aren't we?
Well, we're gonna have to return to our, hour
Try and be an hour
format.
long.
Try to just be an hour because that's a lot.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed discussing this book with you. Of course,
Yeah.
we do have other books, not autobiographies, um, to discuss in the future.
Right.
Um, but I guess we can go ahead and say what our next show is going to be about.
Voyager. Yeah.
We have decided to, yeah, move into Voyager. So we'll be doing our very first episode of Voyager, I guess, next week.
Is that a two-parter? That's probably a two-parter, huh?
It is a two-parter. Now, we had discussed a third host, and at least an occasional third host. I thought that we would do, special episodes. So there's nothing more special than the first one. So we'll be reaching out and making sure that we can do that. If we can, we can. If we can't, hey, we'll figure it out. But just for anybody who checks it out, who hears this last part of this very long episode, uh, just don't be surprised if next week there's three of us instead of two. But yes, we'll be moving into Voyager.
Gotcha.
So I'm excited. I haven't watched Voyager in years, so this would be yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us on this episode. I hope you enjoyed our takedown of this autobiography. You can find this book on Amazon and pretty much anywhere that you want to buy books. There is not an audio book version of this one. I did check. There isn't one. However, you can find several different other individuals' takes on this book, including Sirach Lofton himself, Jake Sisko, of course, who talks about it on his podcast. So all you gotta do is search Jake Sisko on YouTube, and it comes up. It's like the first thing that pops up there. So go ahead and give that a check if you
Do you
want to.
roughly know what he thought about it?
No, I didn't watch it. I just know that it's there.
Okay.
I didn't want to watch it before I read the book.
Yeah, I get a deep
So
kind of
yeah,
opinion of it. Yeah.
but yeah. So until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.